basically 31 white blokes, white men, are to receive £5,000 each compensation because the selection process, when they applied to the armed forces to try to become a pilot, it turned out that they were automatically excluded. They're described in memos seen by certain journalists as useless white male pilots. Useless white male pilots. That isn't that they're useless pilots, it's that they're useless because they're white and they're male. The RAF apparently believes it's very important that they get pilots of colour and women pilots. Okay, great. But at the expense of all white males? It's mad, isn't it? That's absolutely mad. Well, it's surely the people who should get these jobs are the people who are best qualified to do it. Doesn't matter whether they're people of colour, whether they're women or they're white men. The best qualified people should be flying RAF jets, surely, to protect and defend the nation. Nothing else, surely. Surely diversity shouldn't get in the way of the defence of the nation. Extraordinary. So let's talk, shall we, to my next guest, who is a former RAF officer, Tim Davies. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very well. As I say, look, I'm not here to knock down the concept of diversity in the armed forces. That's a good idea. You know, the people who are in the armed forces should represent the people of this nation. So, by all means, pilots of colour, women pilots, by all means. But to have an actual policy where white males are absolutely excluded, you know, described as useless white male pilots, that would strike me as being contrary to the needs of the nation in terms of defence. That the people who should be flying fighter jets to defend this nation are the people who are best at that job, regardless of whether they're women, whether they're people of colour, or whether they're white, or whether they're male. Am I right?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, unfortunately, you know, it's not the post office here, Kevin. It's not B&Q, nothing against those two firms. It's the military, right? So you have to recruit people based on merit and only merit. Unfortunately, the big issue with this is quotas. There's no two ways about it. And quotas might work, as I said, if you're working for a firm that can tolerate that. But I would argue that quotas are entirely the wrong thing for the British military.
Yeah, as I say, 31 white men to get 5,000 quid each. It's a total of £155,000 because it was found that they were unfairly disadvantaged by this recruitment policy that dismissed white blokes as useless. Now, as I say, don't get me wrong, this isn't to knock diversity. Diversity has its place. But nothing should be more important than the defence of the nation. And frankly, if you get, I don't know, let's say you're recruiting 100 pilots and it turns out that of the candidates, you know, I don't know, 95 of the best candidates turn out to be white males, hey, this is the defence of the nation. Go with it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the most aggressive people I ever trained on these airplanes back here are women. There's no two ways about it. The most aggressive people, the best fighter pilots ever trained in the world were women. The problem is, of course, that women don't always stay as long as men do because they tend to go and start families because they're sensible and they realise if they don't, you know, they've been lied to, haven't they, about having it all. So we do tend to lose out on a bit of a value or the value structure from female candidates after a few years. The problem, of course, we've got with the Air Force as well, Kevin, is it's taking a very long time to train pilots. One thing I want to make clear, though, is I don't honestly believe what the Royal Air Force chap there at the recruitment centre was saying was that all white males were useless. They would just happen to be useless to him in the process of selecting people.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think they're trying to say. It isn't that white men are inherently useless at being pilots. It's that they're useless to the RAF in terms of its recruitment policy, which is determined to fill the forces with people of colour and women. As I say, I've got to keep stressing this. I'm sure you don't have a problem with it either. However, I do have a problem with a policy that specifically excludes white men, just as I would have a problem with a policy that excluded people of colour or women. Everybody should have a chance, and the people who get these jobs, these very important jobs, surely must be the people who are best qualified to do that, the best pilots. No other considerations should come into play.
Yeah, I mean, let's make it really simple for people, because I think it's important that we try not to make the narrative divisive. You know, we're all the same. We're all British. It doesn't matter what skin colour you have. It doesn't matter what sex you have. I'm a bit gender critical, fine. But look, when you get into the airplane here, you don't type in your skin colour. The jet doesn't care. The jet's going to kill you just as quickly as it will kill anyone else. What the jet cares about is how good you are. Yeah. There's no other thing that the jet cares about. Now, of course, I'm talking about pilots here. I trained pilots for a very long time, about 10 years. I was in the military for 20 years, both the Navy and the Air Force. And I think what, unfortunately, the Chief of Air Staff has done here is he's put the service back decades. And the reason I say that, Kevin, I'm being honest when I say this, because I do care deeply about it, because I've trained a lot of people, is not only now do you not know whether you're going to be selected based on your talents and your attributes and everything you've worked really hard for. When you're in the service, you won't know whether you've been promoted or whether you've been awarded something based on your skills and everything else. You might think, well, and also the people next to you won't know. So if the young white dude or the black dude or the woman or whatever it might be gets promoted into another post, you might think to yourself, is that because they're a woman, or is that because they're black, or is that part of the Chief of Air Staff's very divisive quota policy that has been enacted, by the way, by the Ministry of Defence and the governments? And let's not think this is a localised policy that Mike Wigson has come out with. This has come down from the top.
How did this happen, Tim? How did we get to this position? Because, as I say, if you just look at this situation objectively, it's mad. And it's dangerous, I would suggest, that we have a policy where they are not seeking to find the best qualified people to fly the jets that defend this nation. There should be one consideration, in my view: is this person the best person for the job? No other considerations. And yet we've come to a pretty pass where white males are being dismissed as useless because of this recruitment policy. How on earth did we get to this point? This is wokery as opposed to the defence of the nation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the ESG, DEI, whatever agenda you want to come out with, the World Economic Forum, whatever it is. You know how it is. We can take out 1,000 different things and address it into here, can't we? But I think what happens is we do have people not realising what excellence delivers. And excellence delivers the safe skies from which us to do business beneath. It delivers whatever business is happening in Ukraine, and whatever you feel about that, irrespective, it delivers safety. I mean, the last time, when were we last invaded? I mean, going back thousands of years. So the Air Force needs to be competent. And the way we do that is we recruit people based on the merit, based on their skill set, based on their academics and everything else. And we don't recruit them based on quotas. It's appalling. It disgusts me, actually, the fact that when I was in, this was never discussed. When I actually taught people on this airplane here, so the Hawks, and I was on Tornadoes here, and the jets all over the place, you sit behind the person when you're instructor. You actually sit, so you can't see them. You can hear their voice, but you can't see the skin colour. Most of the time, no one's talking because it's such a busy environment in these airplanes. You're relying on their actions to keep you alive. And I mean, I've heard some horrendous things coming out of briefings within the Royal Air Force that I'm not going to talk about here, but it seems to be a lot deeper than we realise. It seems to be endemic within the force at the moment. And you can understand why the Navy and the Army are keeping quiet about it, because they want nothing to do with this. They want nothing to do with what the Royal Air Force is doing.
Yeah, well, why is it the RAF? Why are the RAF doing it, and the other forces, as you quite rightly say, Tim, are rather sensibly avoiding this insanity? Why the RAF? What is it about the RAF that is turning it so woke?
Yeah, no, it's valid. And so I flew with the Chief of Air Staff for 2 years. In fact, he brought me from the Navy, well, back in 2003 into the Royal Air Force when we lost the Sea Harrier. I had nothing to fly. The Sea Harrier was being decommissioned. So I went onto his squadron. He's a lovely man. I really like Mike Wigson. I really do. I think what's happened, though, and this does happen to seniors as they rise throughout, Mike Wigson looked at his armed force and he saw that he had 16% women but 3.5% minorities. And that minority figure is lower than any of the other armed forces. The Army traditionally recruits from the Gurkha regiments and everything else. So that kind of boosts its stats a little bit. The Navy recruits heavily from the Commonwealth, the Caribbean, everything else. Again, minority statistics pushed up quite heavily. And it just so happens that minorities aren't interested at the moment in joining the Royal Air Force. Whether that's because it's too technical or not, I don't know. However, he did not want to be the commander who was directed to improve his diversity and his all that, well, the whole D&I thing. And so, of course, he brings in quotas. And it was the most ludicrous quota, to be fair, Kevin. He said, I wanted 40% women and I want 20% minorities in the Royal Air Force by 2030. Patently unachievable. I have no idea. In a country with 13.6% minorities, how do you do that even? The key, and I know you haven't asked me, but I will just give you this for free. The key to how you do it is you just become the best force you possibly can. You tell everyone, look how great we are, look how hard we're working, look at the excellence that the Royal Air Force is delivering, and you attract people who have the same standards or who want to have the same standards as you. And that's where the Royal Air Force failed. And I believe a lot of it, I hate to say it, can be done on ego of very senior chiefs.
Well, listen, Tim, it's been amazing talking to you. Before you go, as a trainer of pilots, what's the main trait you have to be a good pilot? What are you looking for? And let's exclude, I know you're not looking for skin colour or gender. What is it that you're looking for in someone that would indicate to you that this person's going to be a good pilot?
I think two things, primarily confidence and humility. So you've got to be confident in your ability, which means you have to know you got there on merit. You didn't get there because you were a black kid or a woman. It's very damaging. And the humility means you have to understand that the debrief happens within oneself a lot of the time. It happens when you're leaving work in the car to think, how am I going to perform better tomorrow? How am I going to make sure I'm a safer, more competent pilot, and to be able to deliver, kinetic weapon effects to the enemy in a mature and effective manner. So those two things, really, confidence and humility.
Tim, as I said, it's been amazing talking to you. Let's talk again very soon.
Thank you.
That was Tim Davies, their former RAF officer, not mincing his words about this. And it did seem to me pretty damn obvious that an armed force, particularly like the RAF, you're choosing pilots. You're sitting around going, oh, sorry, wrong colour. Oh, no, it's a bloke. We need women. That's ridiculous. This is the defence of the nation. And they are watering down the quality of our pilots, the pilots that defend this nation, on the back of stupid wokery. Oh, got to have a quotas, got to have women, people of colour. Have women, have people of colour. Many as you like, 100% for all I care, as long as we know that the people you hired, that the people who are flying these planes are the best possible people to do the job. So we now know there are lots of white male pilots, wannabe pilots, didn't get to be pilots. We're paying them off $5,000 each because they were excluded from the selection process to join the RAF for two reasons. One, they were blokes, can't have that. And two, they were white. What do you think about that?